budget as a topic or projects that you want to see as a topic, we'll be glad to attend those. But just to know that it is a fully open process. All of the finance committee meetings where the budget is a topic are public meetings. So just know that it is a fully open process, and we take pride in that and have always.
Thank you, Kim. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Our last item on our agenda is a discussion regarding the monthly revenue and expenditure reports.
Okay, so first I want to welcome Councilmember Gofire and tell me if I'm mispronouncing your name.
Welcome.
No fire.
Okay, no fire, okay. The financial reports that you'll get every month are both in your packet. I just want to highlight the format of these things for you. The first 4 pages, gives major revenue sources and a summary of expenditures to date for those major funds. It shows where we budget things, where we project them to be to date, and that's just basically 1/12 per month. It's a little more complicated than that for some areas, but basically that's what we're talking about here. And then gives where we are versus where we were at the same time last year. And that's for each of these major funds. The next report is an accounting report, and just understand that the budget is based on a cash basis. The accounting reports are on a modified accrual basis. So what this attempts to do is on a monthly basis show sort of an accounting report. A lot of these things have been added over the years, and we will continue to add things on your request. We're fully open to if you want to take some things away, but we've never heard that. So each of these reports are on council members' requests. And that goes through page 17. Then the next group of reports are just basically showing revenues versus expenditures to date by department, where their budgets were by category, and how much they've spent for those budgets to date. This is just straight of our accounting system. And again, when I'm saying categories of expenditure, just understand that it's just that. Where you'll see in this report, for example, under Public Works, you see a budget of $10.7 million for salary and benefits. There's 6 or 7 divisions in the Public Works Department that rolls up to that total. And within each of these categories, there are dozens of individual line items of budgeted expenditure that we show in what we call the Yellow Book, the Revenue and Expenditure Report, but it's a fairly detailed report, but it gives that line item detail. As Joel said, if you're having trouble sleeping at night, we can give you the full document. But really, nobody looks at the whole document. Even I concentrate on the finance department and where we're standing. But just know that the information is available. It's a public document if you want to see it or if you want to provide it to anybody in the public. The next page, on page 23, shows you the appropriations the council has made so far in this fiscal year and what those appropriations were for. Again, it's important to understand that only council can appropriate fund balance. That is by statute. So that is the kind of financial control that you have, is on appropriating fund balance. When you adopt the budget, you're appropriating that fund balance and estimated revenues for the full fiscal year. But just understand that if anybody wants to go above the budget, they have to come back to council for an appropriation.
Mayor Holman?
Yes, so in the monthly financial report, I see all of them except for the transit fund.
The revenues or the expenditures? Or it's not in the expenditure? The revenues then?
I see general fund, rainy day fund, PSST, room tax, Westwood, water, water reclamation, sewer,
Oh, the fund balance.
New
ones he's
development.
talking about.
and sanitation. I wasn't sure about transit.
Do you see any of the special revenue funds in that report? Because I'm thinking,
Yeah, all of them except for that one, looks like.
we'll check on that. I'm not sure why that would not be there if we're showing any of the special revenue funds.
Yeah, Norman Ford and PSST and all that are on there.
Okay.
So I was just wondering about transit. And then, so PSST total expenditure, original budget 16 million, and then adjusted 20.4 million. What, and then
That's gonna be mainly carryover
Okay.
encumbrances.
I was trying to make sure I understood
I
that
suspect that $2 million fire truck is in there.
And then the room tax fund, the balance right now is 724,000, or is it?
I believe that'll be as of the end of the fiscal year within the appropriations carrying forward.
Okay, because on the other one, on the summary report, I was seeing, a balance of $3.9 million in the visitor tax fund. Oh, yeah, total budget
Yeah, that sounds more like the budget.
Okay, so I got that then. Okay, yeah, I think I'm clear now. Thanks.
The next group of graphs show some figures about sales tax, comparing it to last fiscal year and comparing it to historic fiscal years. Councilman Holman, Mayor Holman kind of hones in on this each month, but it's fairly useful information, again, showing where we were during COVID, coming out of COVID, and then we kind of been flat since that big rally after the COVID period. And then there's a report that shows our sales tax change variances as they compare to comparable cities in the state and in the region. You see that as we are right now, we're up about 0.5%, which is kind of at the low end of average. Oklahoma City's up about 5.7%, Edmond's down about 0.8%. And again, I would just emphasize that when these things come out in your packet, if you have questions, please ask them in advance of the meeting so that we can prepare answers for you. But there's no stupid questions. I mean, you know, we get tied up in these numbers and we know what's behind all the numbers and that sort of thing. But please, it's public information. We want to give you the answers to the questions that you have or the constituents have, that sort of thing. So please give us time to prepare a response. At a previous Finance Committee meeting, Councilmember Grant asked for this detailed information on overtime expenditures. And so that report has been added. I'll ask Kim to kind of talk through the format of this report, and she's going to pass around some kind of legend or glossary information to describe it.
So this, the report that was included in your packet, just shows current year information. Basically, the original budget, the revised budget, if there was a change that was made to the overtime budget, and then what was spent year to date and in the month of August. And then it shows their remaining budget. So it's really just a 2-month picture. And it's broken down by fund and then department and then division. And then you can see the overtime accounts that are within that division. So so what I want to point out on the legend that hopefully you've received, and I did not keep one for myself, I'll borrow it. No, I do have one.
You're fine.
Just a couple notes that I want to give you. So the overtime glossary is really just kind of definitions of overtime as it relates to the city of Norman. And I was a little bit overzealous maybe, and I kind of have citations on here. showing where you can find this information, like in the personnel manual and the current union contracts that we have, in case you're curious. But a couple things that I want to point out specifically on this report is non-exempt employees, which are employees that are subject to overtime, they're all union employees, okay? The exempt employees, the employees that are exempt from overtime are all non-union. So when you go through the overtime report and maybe you wonder why the police or the fire department is a little bit higher when it comes to overtime, this is just a small factor, but keep in mind that all of the union members, IAFF for fire, FOP for police, they all are subject to overtime. So even your high-paid majors, they're subject to overtime. So just a few hours really racks up the costs there. That's one of the factors that shows or that causes overtime to be so high in the police and fire department. By comparison, AFSCME, which is our the union workers that we have that are not in fire or police, their highest paid employee is $46 an hour. Whereas police's highest paid employee is $76.66, and fire's highest paid employee is $75.55. So they're gonna have a much higher overtime rate. I just always thought that was interesting to note. So non-union employees do not get, for the most part, are not subject to overtime, and then all union employees are subject to overtime. So that's a factor here. Another key factor to consider is the decision of whether overtime is required shall be at the discretion of the supervisor, subject to review by the department director. Except in emergencies, overtime pay or compensatory time requires explicit approval by the supervisor or designee. So we don't just have employees out there racking up overtime without permission. So just wanted to bring that to your attention as well. There's definitions here on the different types of overtime that you're gonna find on this report. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mayor Holman.
So in the top tier of the pay scale, and I don't know if you would have the answer to this, but why would the police chief or the fire chief or captain need to work overtime?
Well, so the police chief and the fire chief are non-union, so they actually aren't subject to overtime as
So
well as
the
the
top
But
deputy.
the majors are,
That's correct, yeah.
and it's, theoretically, they could be investigating a homicide or something like that, and they have oversight of the folks, the detectives that are doing the work, but
That's
Major is
what we
above
count.
captain, right?
Yes, major's the highest below deputy and chief.
So chief, deputy chief, major, and captains are not union employees? Or majors are, but
They
captain-
are.
Everybody but the chief and the deputy
But
chief
those two,
are union employees, subject to overtime.
And they may have to work overtime because,
Attend a council
Whatever they
meeting
may
or
be,
something just is outside the scope of their regular work week.
and then, so like with the SRO program, for example, and working after-school events and things like that, and however many there might be, have we had that discussion with NPS about overtime pay?
Chad definitely could answer that better, but I do want to point out, it's been said before, well, we need more SROs and that's kind of shown where we have such high overtime, but the overtime is after hours and we still need the SROs to cover school. So even if we added a ton more SROs, we're still gonna have overtime because these after hours events are after their regular work week. But if Major Chad Vincent wants to speak to discussions with Norman Public Schools.
She's right, that we are continually evaluating and trying to find ways we can minimize over the last couple of years. It's the number of events that really got kind of out of whack, honestly.
Now we have two high school
And now we have two,
stadiums.
yes, so that is gonna be a thing that's really not reflected here yet. But, so that, and I get it, everybody was excited and they wanted more safety and security for our kiddos. You know, that's at most important, so, but we did get to the point where we probably had too much. So we've taken a really critical look at where do we absolutely have to be, and we've started to trim that back. And then the events themselves, so like football games, for example, we have, for years we did 12 total officers at our Friday night football games. We've got that down to 8, and it's really, really hard to get to trim much more off of that, just because it's just, Friday nights are tough. That's the culmination of the school week and the middle schools and the parents and the entrances and the exits and it's referees and all the things. So, but we are continually looking at that. We're continually being super critical about what events we're covering and how do we continue to reduce going forward.
Councilmember Gettysbury.
Just to kind of piggyback on that also and everything, I had the privilege of sitting in on a public safety sales tax group, and I know that they were looking at the difference between our SOR contract as a city compared to what Cleveland County is responsible for, and the fact that none of their officers have to work any overtime whatsoever, be it they get compensated more than what the city of Norman does for our guys and gals that are highly trained out there with all these events. So one of the things I had put on our board in our retreat was a total relook at our contract, even with the school system, and that we need to renegotiate what's fair and not fair. We're giving twice the amount of people. We're giving all the overtime costs, giving the great care that they give because they're part of this town. But yet we're literally getting paid $200,000-$300,000 less by contract than Cleveland County that gives 7 officers not fully trained, very minimum wage set employees and everything. Just doesn't seem fair. So I think if we look at PD overtime and everything, then that's just a discussion of something that's out of their control. Because like you said, we have to have it for our kids. Everybody wants it for our kids, but who's going to pay for that? Eventually the school system might need to chip in a little more, or maybe hire a different person to do it and everything like that too,
I wish the state would help
Exactly.
with school security.
Actually pay for their overtime, and everything, and supply just as much.
Anthony, do you have anything else to
No,
add?
ma'am, I don't.
Okay.
One thing,
Mayor Holman.
so city managers talked before about how in the police department specifically, even if we had more officers, that might not necessarily reduce overtime because then there would be more officers potentially writing tickets and having to go to court and but with the fire department overtime, would it be different if we had more firefighters? Would that help reduce overtime since they're not writing tickets, they're not going to court? They could end up being on a call, I guess, for a long time. I don't know, but
Our experience has been that adding personnel does not reduce overtime. It's certainly not in fire, because in fire you have all those OSHA standards of how many people have to be on the fire ground and all of that sort of thing. And our experience has been that more people does not mean less overtime.
so how are cities really dealing with this? I mean, it doesn't seem sustainable to me that at some point, what do you do? So how do you get a hold on overtime at this scale?
Well, the dependence is on the supervisors approving overtime. And that's where, the top thing here on your second page of the glossary, the decision of whether overtime is required should be at the discretion of the supervisor. And as Chad says, they try to maintain it as best they can, but, it's only at the discretion of the supervisor. And if the supervisor approves the overtime, it gets paid, and it gets paid time and a half. And just understand that, if you have somebody making $40 an hour, when he works overtime, he gets $60 an hour. And if you have a major who makes $70 an hour, and he works overtime, he gets $105 an hour. I would like that.
But also I guess, you can't, officers are on a call, that call ends up taking several hours, or they have to book someone in a jail, or have to go. I remember Officer Garrett working nights and had to come testify in the middle of the day at court. So he had to, get his uniform, drive into town from out by the lake, and so yeah, I could see how it could be hard not to approve it if they're. I mean, what else are you gonna do if you need
May I
people
add
out?
something? So Public Works is a department here. They have controls around their overtime, the process around their overtime. But I think what the root cause of that is the culture and an expectation that they set at the beginning when they hire on their employees. That expectation or that culture is they are encouraged to choose comp time over pay when they get overtime, because those first 6 months, they're not allowed to take vacation. But by the time that 6-month probationary period is up, they're already conditioned to take comp time rather than overtime and pay or in cash. So I understand that the effect of that may, with the external auditors coming in and telling us what the new standards may be, it may put a bigger liability on our books for comp time or payout. But the wash that Public Works explained to me that they experience is that if you get the comp time, you end up taking the comp time at some point. So you never really pay it at the end of somebody's tenure or career once they leave the city of Norman. So I just think you would have to catch it at the beginning, then it would have more effect than to try and address it at the back end.
Well, I'd like to say to that point, and I have copies of all the contracts and the personnel manuals if y'all want it, but all of the contracts and the manuals state that overtime is the default. And
Yes.
they can only opt to take comp time in lieu of overtime at the employee's decision. So they're really not supposed to be encouraged to take comp time over overtime as a way to mitigate overtime. I just wanna say that for the record.
Oh, no, I don't think it's for that reason. I think it's to encourage, to be able to give people an opportunity to take off for like in that 6-month period when they don't have the time, when you don't have the ability. Is, hey, if you need to go to a doctor's appointment, or if your kid has an event, you don't have the ability to take off that first 6 months, you don't have to use your vacation. You may accrue it, but you can't use it. So in order to maybe have time off, this is an option for you. But that's explained and that is provided to them. And I just think, like Kim said, it is an option, but it's an option that they choose because they're educated on it.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you both for that explanation.
Anybody have any other questions? No?
I did just want to note, so on our sales tax chart, September reflects July.
Yes.
Okay. So we had our best July in the last 3 years. And that's what I always like looking at this, going back to 2019 and just seeing how we're bringing in record, high revenue, but we're still struggling financially to meet expenses. So anyway, thank you all for the extra information and including
you.
the overtime and everything too.
Thank you for the definitions.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you all for being here, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Well, hi there. I didn't get a chance to meet you. So I'm Ray Montoya, also known as Councilmember Montoya. So Brandon, we'll welcome aboard.
Sheriff's. I was planning on, we have 17 elementary schools, and there's a deputy sheriff, it's an SRO.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, I can imagine being, like,